In a relationship, when is honesty not the best policy? How do you balance what you want versus what you need? And is there something you need to say to your spouse but can't find the right way to say it? If so, then you're in the right place. This is the Lunch with Sandy podcast. With nearly 20 years of marriage under their belts, Terrence and Sandy Jackson discuss a range of topics, provide valuable insights on relationships, and talk about the conversations married couples need to have. So what does lunch have to do with all of this? Well, it's a metaphor for how these conversations originally started. Speaking of conversations, let's get one going. Here's your hosts, Terrence and Sandy.
Welcome to the Lunch with Sandy podcast, where we have the conversations that married couples need to have, in addition to a whole slew of other topics that need to be discussed. I'm Terrence.
And I'm Sandy.
And today we're going to be having another conversation about dating. I say another conversation because this is the second go around for this episode because we had a problem, some technical difficulties. Anyway, enough with that. Let's get down to the house cleaning piece of this show that we have to get through, and that is to ask Sandy how she is doing today.
I'm doing well. No, I'm feeling good. Been active this week.
Yeah,
especially this weekend.
I did my second run of the year today. Believe it or not, the second run of the year
it's only
today.
Been 10 months. It's fine.
Well, you know, after running some of those miles with Lexi, so congratulations to Alexis Jackson. That she is the person we're going to shine the spotlight on this week, as she completed her first half marathon. And during her first half marathon, I ran miles 7 through 10 with her, and you did mile 8 through the finish, but it wasn't something that I had planned doing. But after being out there, seeing the hydration boys and getting back into it, I said, you know what? It's time.
Yeah, it was good. It was fun to be a part of her day too. You know, she got to mark something off of her bucket list.
Yeah.
And at first I didn't think that there was going to be a second, but it sounds like, you know, she's gotten into that mode where once you do one,
yeah. And you know what?
Doing more.
A big part of that is the experience. So with that being said, I got to give a few shout outs. First off, shout out to Rhode Races. Karen and Susan, they put on a phenomenal race, as always. But when we start talking about the experiences, I got to talk about the hydration boys and Scott Mason, who is the photographer for those road races. Some awesome photos. That photo that you and her coming across the finish line, that's a nice photo. But I can't forget.
I was walking on water in that picture.
Well, yeah, it looked like it. I can't forget my man Mike Proto and Fred Meyerson. In true fashion, after each race, the hydration boys picked right up where we left off the last time we saw each other. And I look forward to seeing them come at the end of this month. Narragansett. Narragansett half is, I believe, on October 29th.
Yeah. And I saw what Mike Proto was wearing during the race and then the pictures.
So wait, you saw him, what he was wearing through the race, but then did you see what he was wearing at the end of the race?
No, not until we went into the tent where he was clothed.
Yeah, no. So he started the race off clothed.
Yeah.
And with a actual plastic bag. As the race progressed and he got closer to the finish line.
Yeah. I saw like the finish line pics.
Yeah, he lost those. Anyway, on to today's special. And I'm going to ask you this question. But before I ask you this question, I got to tell you I need a little bit of advice. Dating advice. Let me tell you why. As you are aware, I got a new girlfriend. I know you're jealous of her. But I got this new girlfriend, and I got to tell you, dates are cheap.
Well, she's definitely younger than me.
Well, she is younger than you. She's very young. She's a baby.
Yeah, no wrinkles. I wouldn't.
She ain't got no wrinkles.
I don't know if calling her a baby is
She's
might
my baby. Let's get this out of the way. My new girlfriend is my bike. If you guys haven't heard that already, it is my bike. So yes, that is my new girlfriend. So anyway, my question to you is, when was the last time you were on a date?
the last time we were on a date.
And listen, and that's more of a rhetorical question. I asked that question because, you know, in today's environment with everything that's going on and inflation, you know, dating is not the same. You know, so I heard that the game out there has changed, and I say I heard the game is changed because I haven't been out there.
We've been out of the game,
you know what I mean?
For some time.
The game is complete. They're using different balls out there when they're playing. It's not the same.
They're using like duck pin
but
balls instead of regular balls.
But the cost of dating has gone up with inflation and everything. You know, all that stuff is going up, and so I was looking and I saw this stat, and it was from Singles in America, and it said collectively in 2022, singles spent $117 billion on dating. That's with a B.
Yeah.
That's a big number.
Insane.
Yeah. So with inflation, now there are some people who are changing up the game, and I saw on one of those dating apps, I think it was Plenty of Fish, I think that's what it's called. They had this term, and that term was called inflating. And it's basically people looking at how much they actually spend or cutting back what they would spend regarding when it came to going out on a date, or at least taking that into consideration. So I guess,
because I do wonder what the average is at this point in time. Like, what is the average spent per date?
I'm sure you can probably find out what the average is. And I think that right now there's a large percentage of that's bringing that number down because, listen, gas prices alone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, that, and do people have more dates these days versus when we were dating?
I don't know if people have more dates.
Do you like me? Check the box. Yes or no?
That's not dating. That's elementary school, and we never did that.
That was middle school for me, but okay.
Yeah. Do you like me? Check the box. Do you?
I felt like, I don't know. I don't know if it was just me and the environment I grew up in or what, but I felt like back then it was more talking, like on the phone and stuff. Like
people don't use the. Listen, you're showing your age. People don't use the phone anymore.
They don't.
No, I mean everything right now.
People now go out and have more dates because maybe
no one goes out more. Have you seen COVID? I'm not talking about the movie. It's all. There's a lot of stuff that people do online. Now, I think technology. Well, not necessarily. The technology has always been there, but I think with when the pandemic hit, people got more used to, that whole. I don't want to say the term remote, but you don't have to be in the same place.
Video chat
and,
on the phone.
And I mean, just look at all the relationships that take place.
Anyways,
video chat.
Yeah, over just being on the phone.
Well, I mean, I'm never on the phone.
I try not to be either, but I feel like video chat.
I'm assuming you're talking about work. Keep that work stuff.
No, I'm talking about it if we were dating today. I think.
Well, we're not dating today.
Well, we could.
So I'm not going to get on no video. Listen,
do you want to go out with me?
Listen, just send your messages down to me through Jax. He'll translate, and then I'll send them back up to you. Anyway, let's get back. Let's get focused. So with the state of the current environment and the cost of everything going up, a lot of more people are making different choices when it comes to dating. And I guess if you were dating now, would that impact your dating or who you choose to actually date?
Yeah, well, to even start off with, right? I feel like at this point in time, I'd be more reluctant to date people I didn't know.
Well, I mean, that's you're definitely playing the wrong game now because people do that all the time.
No, I know. So I feel like dating for me would be like, let's go grab a cup of coffee because I want to meet you in a place where there's lots of people.
Well, people are definitely being more creative due to the fact that they're being more conscious when it comes to the whole choosing a place or a
Public location.
well, not just a place or what they're going to do for the actual date, right? And again, being budget friendly means that when you're planning for a date, you really have to plan. You got to be creative because it's not so much that being financially conscious in a situation where costs are up is a bad thing. It just means you got to look at things differently, and you also have to take into account how is the person who you're going to be going on this date with is going to look at it. Yeah. So you gotta stay on your toes.
No, you're right. Everything is ultra expensive. My goodness, just going to the movies is like, by the time you get the movie ticket, any concession and whatnot, you got to be in like almost $100 at this point. That's not even like a cheap date anymore. The
movies haven't been a cheap date in a long time. I mean, it's more expensive now, but it hasn't been a cheap date in a long time.
No, it hasn't, but it continues. Talk about inflating. Like, I feel like the price there continues to inflate quite a bit. Well, unless you be creative and you go to like the local store and get the candy and sneak it in your
Who in
pocket.
the hell is... Oh, you're talking about the movie theater. I thought you were talking about, you're going to go to the local store. We're going to get some candy for a date.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
So being budget conscious, it can have its advantages when you're talking about dating. And when I say that, what I mean is, I talked about how you have to, be more creative because you actually have to plan out what it is you're going to do when you start saying, okay, well, rather than do this, I'm going to find a more financially responsible thing or event to do. If you do it right, it can make things more interesting depending on who the person is planning it, because now you're not doing the run of the mill. We're going to go to the movies. Mm-hmm. We're going to go to the expensive restaurant. You got to find something different to actually do. And depending on what it is that's planned, you can have a more intimate interaction because now you're taking all those distractions and you're eliminating them.
Well, and you can learn about the person and how they planned it.
Well, I'm going to categorize that under, a more intimate interaction. You're sitting there grilling them. Listen, I know this date ain't working out, but if you can tell me how you planned this so I can do the same thing for my next date, I'd really appreciate it.
No, I mean, if the person isn't even putting any effort whatsoever, like even from the jump, I guess that would just be like, hey, whatever, we're going to be conscious friendly. We're going to do something cheap, because whatever, you're one of 3 dates this week. No, I'm just kidding. But no, but seriously, like if they're like, oh, well, I just figured I'd pick you up and we'd just sit in my car. Like,
well, I mean, then that means you chose wrong. I'm talking about that's not being financially conscious.
No, I know.
That's
exactly.
being cheap.
So that's what I mean. Like,
we ain't listen. Push those cheap people to the side. We're not going to discuss those cheap people because that's just being cheap. I'm talking about the opportunity. So the opportunity for someone to step outside of the box and create an experience or plan an experience that can be more memorable because it's not the same run-of-the-mill routine that has happened since dating was invented. Yeah. And that's movies, dinner. Yeah. Things like that.
Honestly, to me, I prefer not to do those things.
Well, you ain't dating no one anyway.
What are you talking about? You found a new girlfriend? I'm going to have to go find a new boyfriend.
Yeah, Jax, she can take you out to the dog park where there's nobody else there and get you some kibble. That's about it. That's the extent of, you're dating. So,
but no, if I was dating today, I wouldn't want to do those run of the mill like dinner or movies. Movies you're watching and you're not really having a chance to conversate. Dinner, I feel like there's always so much going around the restaurant. Like a lot of times it's very loud and it's hard to, get to know somebody and actually connect with them and have a more like truly intimate setting where you're really talking about things and getting to know the person. So for me, I'm like, those things aren't even things I'd want to do today.
You know what I'm noticing today?
What's that?
You talking a lot about you and your dating. If someone's going to take you out to dinner, you better enjoy that food and be happy. You getting all sedity over here. Listen,
I'm not being sedity. I'm actually.
if I take you to the movies, look, we ain't supposed to be talking in the movies anyway. You sit there and you watch that film and you don't say nothing.
Exactly. So how is that conducive to dating? How
To
do you
each
really
his
get
own.
to know them?
So listen, let's push that to the side for a second and not talk about just the dating. Let's get back to the topic of what are some of the things that you would consider a good date, or what are some of the things that would fall into a category of dating on a budget that you would be on board with?
That's a good question. I honestly don't know because I'm not creative.
You see this? Now, listen, if someone takes the lead and decides they're going to take you to dinner and a movie and you ain't got no other options, you're going to have a problem. Listen, then you know what they need to do? They need to pick you up and just sit in the car and just get you some McDonald's and say, I didn't really plan nothing. We're going to sit here, eat in the car and talk. I will tell you some things that.
No, I can come up with some. So one, I already mentioned, grab a cup of coffee. Like, I love coffee.
Yeah, you do.
So
That's assuming that the person who you date is going to like coffee.
they don't have to like coffee. Coffee places have more than just coffee.
Yeah. Probably not no good stuff. But anyway, go ahead, grab a coffee.
Or do something outdoors, especially if
Outdoors
it's
can be nice.
weather, hiking. I don't think biking or running would be really conducive.
But I mean, I do think
conversations,
it's not always about a conversation. It's about sharing an interest, and you can have a great time or find out a lot about somebody through doing an activity such as biking or maybe even running. I think that's different. Again, now I'm talking about outside of the box because it shows that individual a side of, you that they're not going to get if they go to the movies or sit in the car or whatever.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, you can also, my thing right now would also be like, what are people's red flags and trying to like walk away.
What's that have to do with?
If I was dating today, I'd be just out there looking for everybody's red flags. But no, I mean like running and biking, you could pick up on some of those. Like if they just abandon you and just take off, like that would be somebody I wouldn't want to date again in the future. So I feel like, yeah, you're right. Maybe you're not conversating as much, but you could still be learning about the person.
Yeah. Okay. So some other things that, I mean, you can always do something like go to the museum. Mm-hmm. I think that's different because again, that's a different side of you. It's more of a, shows you have some culture. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But it gives you an opportunity to see where that person's interests lie when it comes to those things. Again, it's about planning something and then being able to, obviously when you plan something, there should be some input from the person on the other side. And if not, then, you may end up in a situation where it's just, something that you enjoy doing.
You're right. To be honest, like lived in the state for a very long time, all my life actually. But, if you looked up like the top 10 things to do here, I probably haven't even done half of them. Like I feel like we don't also take advantage sometimes of where we live, especially if we lived here all our lives. So it would be interesting to just pull up one of those like top 10 things and just go through all 10 of them. Because most of them are not like expensive things. They're just like monuments to go see, like whatever. Like, and I feel like that could be like a nice, creative, cheap date.
Well, it can definitely be on a budget, but it's not very creative if you're looking it up and you're getting it from somebody else. But, I mean, those are options. One of the things that I think that would show a lot of character is for your date going to do a volunteer event. And I say that because we both volunteer, but not necessarily to make it about us. But, when you can take some of yourself and give to others, that says a lot about that individual. And if you have someone who is willing to do that, now, a relationship is give and take. It's a sign that, that ability to compromise.
Maybe there's potential.
Probably there.
Yeah, no, volunteering is, I think, good. Yes. Cheap date.
So do you think there are some benefits to looking at where the environment is financially and making decisions on what you do from a dating perspective?
I think for me, my thing is when you're constantly doing like the whatever money spending stuff, like the dinners and this and that, like at some point, if your relationship continues, it's not going to be just always going out to dinner and doing this other stuff. You want to have range, right? So I think that's the biggest benefit of doing something different, right? Other than the traditional like dinner and movies and all that good stuff, because it's like, you're going to have to expand the relationship, and it's going to be more than, like I said, just out to dinner.
Yeah. So I'm thinking more from the perspective of not what the actual event is, but making the decision to look at the impact financially doing those actual things will have in the actual environment. And I do think there are benefits, because when someone has the awareness to look and say, hey, listen, financially, I need to be a bit more responsible. And that's not to say that someone who goes out and buys dinner is being financially irresponsible, but it shows that that person, they're consciously thinking about where they are from a financial perspective. And when you start talking about the long game and you start talking about the future and spending appropriately or being smart with your spending, doing that during that dating process shows you that that person is at least thinking about, okay, where their dollars are going, and making sure that they get what their dollar is actually worth.
Well, that, and when you're dating, you don't know if this is going to turn out for the best or the worst, right? Like, who wants to drop a couple of $100 on like a first date and then you
Some
never
people
see
do.
the person again? Like, to me, that's like gambling. You know what I mean? Like, I'm spending big money for like little return.
This is why you shouldn't be dating.
No, I shouldn't.
Because you have no faith in anyone out there. None whatsoever.
That is not true. But, think about it. Like, going on a first date, you don't know if you're going to actually hit it off with the person or not. You both might just decide, and I'm not just saying it's one-sided. It could be both-sided. You might you decide that, you know what, you're a nice guy or a girl or whatever, but I don't see where we have a connection or whatever. And then you're on to your next first date with somebody else. And, at some point, if you're not finding that person, you're going to be in for a lot of money spending.
I can tell you can easily spend a couple $100 on a first date. And I'll give you an example. Let's say you meet someone and you're huge Hootie and the Blowfish fans. I just pulled that name out of the air. And there's an upcoming concert. Tickets are $70 a piece.
Yeah.
That's just for the tickets. That's not including the car ride.
That's a cheap concert.
Exactly. But what I'm saying is this.
No.
What I'm saying is this. 2 tickets, let's say that puts you back $140. Rides to and from, let's say, people don't, let's say you drive. Well, some people drive, some people Uber. Let's say it's close enough you Uber, and that Uber is going to cost you $60 both ways, right? So you're at $200 right there. You're going to get something to eat, whether you go to a restaurant or where you eat at the venue. Now, it's not a situation where, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't seem like a lot of money, and it doesn't seem like well, it's not a small bit, but it doesn't seem like, okay, well, you're wasting it because you're getting something out of it because you want to see Hootie and the Blowfish. And now you have this person who is a fan. So from that perspective, I look at it and say, there are going to be times where you're going to drop that much money.
Well, right. But think about it. If you're dropping it consistently,
well, listen,
and you're dating multiple people, dating is about trying to find a person that you have a connection with, right? Like that's the whole point of dating.
It's different now. So again, this is how long you've been out of the game. This is why you ain't got a boyfriend and I got a girlfriend. You don't. All that stuff is done over apps now. So you're not spending all that money. You're not spending that money until you get to the point. You wait till you get to the point where you already, I don't know if it's left or right, whichever direction it is, you already swiped right on one person or left or whatever it is, and you've had a couple conversations. So they're not out there spending that money 3 or 4 times. They don't got them lined up, like a I don't know, like a police lineup or whatever, and say next one up, or number 3 turn to the side or whatever. So, but from the perspective of when you start
dating a police lineup now.
Yeah, listen, I've been out of the game. Look, I don't know why I asked you for advice. Jax, I got to get some advice from you when I go out on a date with my new lady. But anyway, from the perspective of, I do think there are benefits, because the other aspect is, if you look at it from this perspective, when you go about creating an experience, and I use that term experience because, again, we're talking about stepping outside of the box, and we're talking about creating something that is going to be different from that normal stuff. You get the opportunity to put your focus on what matters, that real stuff.
Yeah.
Again, now taking those distractions, moving those distractions out of the way and all that other stuff, you're looking at it from the perspective of, okay, because I want to be cognizant of the fact that I don't need to spend all this money to have a good experience. I need to make sure that while I'm creating or planning this experience, there's something meaningful about that experience that's going to be memorable from my perspective, and hopefully from the perspective of the other person who is going to be with me. So it gives you the opportunity to focus on the real stuff, because again, those distractions you take away and you move them to the side. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to do it over and over and over as you go out and you date that lineup.
Like, hey, we were fortunate in finding each other pretty early on, but not everybody's as fortunate. Well, sometimes it takes a few.
It does take a few, but you got to make sure that you ain't lining them up and just spending those racks and racks and racks.
Like, I'm not one to judge, whatever.
Yeah. So when I first heard this term, I originally was like, well, what in the world is this? Yeah. But when I started to research it and as I think about it, I think that it's very smart, because again, as a society, we tend to be shallow. Yeah. And by that, what I mean is, when you look at other cultures, they don't need all of that fancy stuff thrown at them to make a connection or to be happy. And I think that we end up in situations where we're not happy with someone because in the beginning, we didn't do all those things that were more meaningful and showed us who the actual person was. I think that drive to impress the other person can get in the way. And when you look at it from and that's not to say you can't impress someone now when you're taking them out for a date, but when you look at the opportunity for you to actually do more meaningful stuff or do stuff that's going to show you more about that individual early on, you learn about that individual and you get a chance to decide either that individual is going to work with me or not. And when I say work with me, I should have said work for me. But I think that there are some benefits when it actually does come to that. Now, you know what time it is. I don't mean the actual time. I mean time of the show. It's time for my realization of the week.
Go for it.
My realization of this week is we need to understand that sometimes if you're chasing something, that means something is running away from you. And that's not to say that you shouldn't go after your dreams or things like that. But sometimes we chase things saying, oh, I'm going to get this, or I'm going to get that person, this, that, and the other. And the method that you're taking just doesn't work if that thing that you're chasing is running away. It's just going to get further and further. So we just need to think about the approach that we're taking when we're trying to attain things, and make a decision on whether or not what we're actually chasing can be caught. Because sometimes it can't. And with that, I will say, this conversation is over, Sandy. I have to get ready for my date. So I want to thank everyone for listening.
I'm taking her out.
We hope you join us for our next conversation. And please be sure to follow and leave feedback on all the socials.
That's it for this week's episode of the Lunch with Sandy podcast. Thanks for listening. We'd love to hear your feedback and comments on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter at Lunch with Sandy. And be sure to follow us on your favorite podcast app. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to rate and review us. Thanks again for listening to the Lunch with Sandy podcast.